Oh, that's an excellent question. I do think if he's found innocent, it could actually, I don't know if it's going to hurt or help, but it could hurt, I think, Henry, because someone did the shooting and they point the finger to someone else. So, if in fact we find that this is an acquittal, that the jury believes that it's not beyond a reasonable doubt, that they didn't prove their case, then the prosecution is obviously going to go much harder against Henry. That's the only person that they have left. He can't be tried again if he's acquitted, and so they'll go after Henry. And frankly, I think, that will be a much harder case for Henry. He's not going to be able to point the finger at Melly because he's been acquitted if this hypothetical plays through. So, excellent question. I do think, I'll add, that the prosecution is probably taking copious notes, making sure that they see the strengths and weaknesses in their case before they actually pursue their case. They've already obviously begun the case against Henry, but I think they'll be much careful next time because they will make sure they do these discovery. They had sanctions for failing to provide discovery. So definitely this case, no matter what happens at the end of the day with Melly, will help the prosecution pursue their case against Henry.
All right. Our next question is from Dariha from YouTube. Bob, how is the medical examiner able to determine who fired the shot and where it came from?
Well, that's exactly the million-dollar question. And to get back to the question that Terry was just answering, if this jury comes back that it wasn't convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that it was Melly that did it, when the prosecution goes to prosecute the co-defendant in the case, what are they going to do? Change the theory of their case? Then their witnesses are all going to change the theory of their case, including the medical examiner at that point in time. It puts the prosecution in a box. And don't forget, at that point in time, if Melly is acquitted, he no longer has the Fifth Amendment right not to remain silent, and in fact can get on a witness stand at that point in time because double jeopardy attaches, and he no longer faces any exposure for speaking in court. Will he cover his friend? Will he explain a different story, which is probably likely in that scenario? So yes, let's wait to see. I've done a lot of murder cases, and I have to be honest with you, I've never seen a medical examiner be able to give with great accuracy and scientific reliability that which the prosecution is hoping for right now. So we'll see. But I think the bigger question is, if there's an acquittal, respectfully, I think that guts the prosecution's case. It guts their witnesses. It guts their expert. It guts their medical examiner.
All right. Interesting. We'll have to wait and see, right? We can't answer that question just yet. We'll have to wait and see how this case ends up. Kimberly M. from YouTube asks, is there any CCTV footage, Mina, from the location where the shooting allegedly happened? So they're talking about CCTV footage, security cameras, things of that nature.
They don't even know accurately where the shooting happened. They have a location, there's evidence of cell phone data following them to a specific location, but that's the problem with this case, right? We don't know where the shooting happened. We don't know how it happened. There's no gun here. There's no DNA of Melly inside of the car. And there's not much that we do know. So that's really the burden on the prosecution in order to clear up these questions. And at this point, I haven't seen anything that clearly states where this shooting happened, how it happened, and what was used, what gun was used in this shooting.
Yeah, we know they recovered a .40 caliber round, so we do know that. And there was an area that they discussed and showed pictures of where there was some, broken glass on the ground and things like that, where they are claiming that this happened. So I'm sure the prosecution will tie this all together in their closing, but that's something we're still waiting to see how they bring this all together in closing. Our next question, two YouTube questions. One is from Tainaja Jania asking, why is this case being sentenced to death if they barely have evidence upon him? And then there's a Trinice Wheeler question. In your experience, does having the death penalty on the table and no smoking gun evidence to prove guilt typically lead to a not guilty verdict? So it's kind of a two-part question there for you, Terry. First up, Why are they seeking the death penalty in this case? And then does not having a smoking gun typically lead to a not guilty verdict?
I think we're all trying to wonder, Anjanette, why they sought the death penalty in this case. And to answer the second part, I do believe that it will help as far as getting a possible acquittal is concerned. Listen, when you have a case that is a death penalty case, obviously you have these aggravating factors. The three aggravating factors we have here is that it is especially heinous and atrocious. We have cold, calculated, and premeditated, and obviously we have the gang affiliation. But generally speaking, you have multiple parties like mass shootings. You have cases where there is no question as to the guilt. For instance, in the Parkland shooting case, which is obviously a big case, they admitted to actually doing the shooting. So you do the death penalty when there's no question in your mind that you're going to be able to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. There's so many questions in this case that our viewers are having. So it is an interesting issue why they chose it. And I do think knowing, and the jury isn't really advised, but they do know that this is a death penalty case. So that factor alone, I think, in the back of their mind is going to say, look, we're not going to find him guilty. This possibility could exist because we don't want that death penalty in this case. So I do think it could, ironically, help Melly at the end of the day.
It's very possible. We should mention that the state sought the death penalty with the support of the victims' families. They wanted this. So, Terry, thank you. We'll let you get back into court. Mina, thank you for being with us. Bob's going to take it over from here. I'm Anjanette Levy, and you've been watching The Lunch Show. We'll be back.
Welcome to Law and Crime. My name is Bob Bianchi. I'll be taking it for the next 2 hours. As you know, we're covering the YNW Melly trial out of Broward County, Florida. The South Florida rapper who's accused of double murder for the deaths of Anthony Williams, also known as YNW Sack Chaser, and Christopher Thomas Jr., also known as YNW Juvie. Court is still at their lunch recess, but they're slated to begin pretty soon. So as soon as they come on, you know we're going to jump into it. But before they went to lunch, the state said that they plan to call the medical examiner, Rebecca McDougal, to the witness stand. However, the defense, which is kind of typical in cases like this, objected to the admission of autopsy photos that the state went into evidence. So let's take a listen to what it is that they had to say. Break it down with my great panel, because again, this is a very common argument made, and the judge has to kind of strike a balance between two competing legal interests. Let's go to it.
In the other case that the state cited, which is Williams v. State, found at 77 3rd 726, the court said, where photographs are relevant, the trial court must determine whether the gruesomeness of the portrayal is so inflammatory as to create an undue prejudice in the minds of the jurors and distract them from a fair and impassioned consideration of evidence. When less graphic photos are available to illustrate the same point, the relevancy standard by no means constitutes a carte blanche for the admission of the gruesome photos. Judge, there's no question that the victims in this case died of gunshot wounds. Primarily one gunshot wound was fatal on each one of the alleged victims in this case. In fact, this doctor will testify, I believe, that this is a rather unusual case in that she could determine which shot occurred first in both of the victims, and they were the fatal shot in both of the victims. Therefore, the introduction of all these other photographs are irrelevant, prejudicial, and we would object to them.
Thank you. So, Doctor, my question, I guess, is the photographs were presented to you. They've been marked. How they've been marked, ma'am?
So defense counsel has placed a sticky note on any that he is objecting to of the 28 that have been selected. Triple C for identification.
All right, so if
you want to do them one at a time?
That's what I'd like to do, is if you could show the photograph and...
May I approach you?
Yes, you may.
Which photo?
Doctor, you're not concerned or intimidated if the attorney
course
come
not.
up to you?
No, I'd rather than see it here so I don't have to show it. Just stay 6 feet away.
That's fine.
So this first picture with the sticky note actually is the face shot with heat number, the ME case number that is unique to this case. So what this does is it shows that this number will be in every single photo. Therefore, I think it's needed.
Thank you. And is there any duplicates of that photo showing the case number?
Every photo will have this case number.
Understood.
But this is the face of the decedent. That's how we identify him, and that's what this photo is for.
Thank you.
So this next series of photographs are the clean hand photographs. We take these photographs to document whether there are any injuries to the hands. You know, were they in a scuffle? Is there any hemorrhaging, contusions? If that's a line of questioning, then I need these photos to show that.
And so Dr. McDougal, you said clean hand. If you could explain to His Honor.
I can. So, in the course of a suspicious case, when we take photographs, we do what's called overall photographs initially. So those are usually bloody hands, right? Bloody defects, bloody body. When we clean them up, we take a second round of photographs that are clean photographs. So these photographs are the clean photographs. I don't see any blood on any of these photographs.
May I inquire as to how many photographs?
Once the doctor's finished.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so these are the clean photographs. of the hands. So,
Are you done, Doctor?
I am.
Yes, you have a
How
question.
many photographs of the two hands are in that file?
So there's a front and back. So there's one front, one palm, and a side to show every piece of each hand to show that there's no injuries.
My question is, how many photos in total of the hands are there?
So there are 6 photographs, one of the palmar surface of each hand, one of the other surface of each hand, and one of the side of each hand.
And there's no injuries on the hands?
That's correct.
We would object that it's duplicitous and it has no relevance.
Thank you. That objection is noted. It's overruled. The photographs are, when you say are clean photographs, there's no blood, there's no gruesomeness or anything like that associated with those photographs, counsel. So the objection noted, it's overruled.
Did Your Honor rule as to the face establishing shot?
Overruled.
Okay.
I understand the purpose of it. It's not a gruesome photograph.
So these next 2 photographs are of the same wound. The difference is one is an orientation shot, which is this one, and then one is a close-up. If you show just the close-up so I can talk about the characteristics of that wound, there's no way for me to show where it is on the body. I can say where it is, but I can't show it. So if you want an orientation shot so you can show where it is, and then a closer shot so I can explain the characteristics of the wound, then I would say both pictures are needed.
And is that what you're suggesting, doctor, that you to show the orientation as well as to a close-up of the injury, that you need those pictures to illustrate that?
I do.
Well, thank you. And are you telling me, doctor, that you need both photographs to illustrate or explain your testimony?
I would prefer both because you can tell in the close-up that this looks like a laceration, which is consistent with an exit wound. I can explain it from this one, but you can't really see it.
Thank you.
Is the court allowing both of those photographs in?
She's saying she needs to explain the testimony. Yes, that's the way I understand it.
I believe she said she could explain it on either one of the photographs.
I can explain that it's a laceration on each one in order for everyone involved to be able to see why it's a laceration instead of, yeah, that's a laceration over there. I think they're needed.
Thank you. The objection notes overruled. Again, these photographs show depict an injury externally. It's not an internal. I don't know that they're so gruesome as to inflame the jury. Something along these lines.
I did, so the court now has put a sticker on all of the internal injuries, I believe, you're looking at right now. Correct, doctor?
Yes, sir.
And I'm standing at a distance from you because you were not in that 10-day grace period.
I'm not.
So I'm going to move a little further away.
That's fine. So normally, Judge, I would say that internal photographs are not needed. The reason that these photographs are important in this particular case is that the first shot, which was to the back of the neck, when you look at the undersurface of the skin around that injury, there's hemorrhage, which means I can tell you that he was alive when that shot was fired. The second shot, third shot went to the shoulder. The second shot that went through the heart and the left lung. The organs prove that there was no heartbeat when those shots were inflicted. So if anybody is trying to say that one shot came, he was alive when that shot was shot, and the other 2 were after he passed away sometime later, the only way to show that with the photos is to show you that in the lung, in the heart, where the projectile from the shoulder was retrieved, that there's absolutely no hemorrhage around any of those organs or wounds. Can you do it with just the lung picture? Do you need every single one of them? I mean, the heart, absolutely no hemorrhage. Your heart's got all the blood's right there. If you're alive and it's beating, it's going to bleed. So,
I'm sorry, may I, Your Honor?
Sure, I'm trying to understand, doctor, whether or not you need these pictures to illustrate the testimony and whether you need all of them. Because
If I want to show you that there's hemorrhage here, and he was alive, and that's why there's hemorrhage, and there's nothing on this lung, so he's dead when that shot's fired, then I need these photographs. Can we parse it down to half of them? I mean, if, you want to show that there's no hemorrhage in the heart, the pathway of that bullet is the same projectile, you could show one.
So would be removing perhaps the lung photo?
I think the lung is probably the best photo of all of them because there's no hemorrhage there. I think you need the one that shows that there was a beating heart.